Hello there and welcome to Growallotmore. Up on the decking area we've got some rosemary and sage plants ready to plant out. They've established really good root systems and you can see that underneath the pot. So they're ready to be potted on, ready for overwintering. Now in here I've got a mixture of perlite and compost, and I've actually got a mixture of pots, so some recycled plastic as well as a terracotta pot. Now I'm going to be using this terracotta pot, so I'm going to slightly fill it, and then I think I'm just going to do one of these sage plants. So gently tap it out, and as you can see, really nice root system around the plant. And then I'm just going to pop that in, earth it up, firm it down, give it a water, and then that will go into my cold frame ready for next year for planting out. So while I get on with these, why don't we have a look at what's coming up in today's programme. In today's programme we'll be looking at what we can harvest in September, how we can store apples ready for the winter, looking at jobs to do. We'll be looking at what seeds you can collect. We'll have a look at the pests and disease at this time of year, any flowers that are currently in bloom, what there is to sow and grow, and I'll introduce you to our new friends here at Growallotmore. I'm just looking to harvest a cabbage that's actually split, and we've had some really odd weather in August and it's been very wet, and it's effectively split the cabbage due to the amount of water that's going up through the roots. A lot of people always think that something's eaten it or something's gone wrong with the plant. It hasn't. It's just naturally just expanded to the point of where it's exploded. So there's nothing wrong with it, it's still edible, you can still eat it, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So just cut right back to the base. So that's one thing that you can harvest in September. Let's have a look at some others. Now that you've collected your apples carefully, you want to make sure there is no damage on them for storing. So just look out for any bruises or holes, as this will potentially lead to mould later on. Now, there are lots of different ways to store apples. The best conditions, however, are things like with a good moisture content, also dark and quite airy. So a shed's very good, garage, or even a cellar potentially. There are lots of different ways to store them. I quite like to wrap mine in newspaper, making sure that the whole apple is covered. And then I place this into a mushroom crate. These are recycled and I find these really useful. They've got very good ventilation around the side, plus I got them for free. So you just want to put them in. The other thing that these do very well is they also stack. So again, good ventilation around. You want to make sure that apples aren't touching other apples. That's the reason why I use newspaper. You also want to check your apples every couple of weeks or so, just to make sure that none of them are rotting. Another good way I've found is, again, using something with really good ventilation, and I've created 2 runners just using cardboard. And then lay the apples in between, just making sure though that they don't touch in between, otherwise that again could lead to rotting. Another thing you might be able to pick up for free are these cardboard inserts. Generally a lot of supermarkets will have these, and it's actually to do the purpose what we're doing now, is to stop the apples touching each other, preventing things like bruising because they won't rock around in transport. So again, I can use these to separate my apples, and again just make sure that they don't touch. Now, apples can store all the way, potentially even all the way through spring, but there are some varieties that won't be able to, and for those in particular you can just store those in the fridge. I've got a freezer bag that I just reuse quite often, so I just wash it out and then just put the apples in the bag. These will only last approximately about 2 weeks though, so you can also process apples in all different types of ways. So you can juice them, you can freeze them, you can obviously cook them, and you can obviously eat them. So that's for the fridge or freezer. I find that the storage of apples actually enhances its flavour, so it gets sweeter with time. So it's wonderful at Christmas. And then once you've done that, like I said, put it into a shed, garage or cellar if you have one, somewhere with good ventilation and a little bit of moisture. And that's it. Now, I don't usually need a step ladder, however on this occasion I think I really need one. This is our Japanese wineberry. It's produced some fantastic fruit this year. We've had nearly about 4 kilos worth of fruit just off this one plant. However, it really now needs to be tied back. This is actually where next year's fruit will come from, so I need to be a little bit careful. Having said that, there's plenty of other shoots that I need to tie in. So this is one job that you can be getting on with right now, but let's have a look at some more. Continue to deadhead flowers such as cannas and dahlias. When asparagus fronds turn yellow, cut them down to the base. Continue to water in pots and also in the greenhouse. Try and keep on top of weeding if at all possible. It's a good time to stake any Brussels sprouts, as these will potentially rock in the wind. Try and tidy up as you go and you'll find it a lot easier. It's a a good time to start closing the greenhouse windows to keep the heat in. Harvesting crops is essential at this time of year, and there'll be plenty of them. Be careful of fallen fruit, as it can attract things like wasps. It's a good time of year to start collecting seeds, such as lavender, echinacea, scabious, lupins, and much more. Collect them when they're dry and then place them in a brown paper bag and place a label on them, and then sow them when you're ready. Now, wasps can be a particular problem at this time of the year. We have a wasp nest just in between some of our water barrels, but they are actually fantastic for your ecosystem and to also control other pests, things like caterpillars on your allotment. So it's well worth keeping them if you possibly can. However, if they do become too much of a problem, you can contact your local authority, or even there are some methods which are a little bit more humane, and I would advise that you look out for those and try not to use things like pesticides or insecticides. So that's one pest or problem that you might have at this time of year, but let's have a look at some others. Now then, it's getting towards that time of year where autumn bulbs you can start to plant out. So things like daffodils and crocuses. Not quite yet tulips, that's a bit later on in the season. But we've got a pot here and we've got some daffodil bulbs. These were actually used last year, and to be honest, I don't really know what they are. But hopefully they do quite well in this pot. They're quite good to plant in the ground now because it's quite warm. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to use this pot, and I'm just going to place some crocks in the bottom, which is basically broken up plant pots. That just adds a little bit of drainage. And then in here we've got a mixture of compost and perlite. Not too much perlite, but that just helps the bulbs not sit in too much moisture and it will prevent them from rotting. So I'm just going to fill this about 3/4 the way up. And then put my bulbs in the top, just firm them in. And when you're planting daffodils, you want about double the bulb's height. And you're probably looking in a pot about 10 centimetres away from others. You don't want bulbs touching one another, otherwise they will rot. So these will produce flowers in spring, but let's have a look at some flowers that are flowering now in September. here we have a bit of bare soil actually. This is where some of our beetroots previously were, and where some Brussels sprouts were, but they didn't really take. So what we're going to do is, rather than leave the ground bare, I'm going to be putting some green manure in this. And effectively that's a seed. And what it does is it actually improves the soil, so it's a soil conditioner, but it also prevents weed growth, holds onto the nutrients, and will dig it back into the ground, and it will give it a really nice structure to the soil. This in particular is called Felicia. It's really good for dry soils, but it's really good for actually all types, to be honest. And the way you do it is just undo the seed packet and get a good handful and just give it a good light sprinkling. Now this will be an overwintering manure, so it won't actually be ready to turn over until early spring, midway through spring. So you can use this also as a summer and autumn manure, but like I said, I'm going to use it as an overwintering manure, and it just holds on to that moisture, holds on to that nutrients in soil, and doesn't allow it just to drain through. Once you've cast it across the ground that you would like, just firm it in. You can either do that or use a piece of wood, and then I'll sprinkle a layer of compost, just a very light dusting over the top. Put the lid back on, and then that'll hopefully keep the birds off, and then we'll have green manure in the springtime. That's one thing that you can sow and grow at this time of the year. Let's have a look at some more. And here we have a Growallotmore new family member. We have another two, so this is Pearl. All of them are around the 18-month mark, and they are ex-battery. We got them from the British Hen Welfare Trust, because otherwise these would have gone off to slaughter. So we have Pearl, Mavis and Babs, and they actually produce eggs really well. We've had about 20 eggs on average per week, and they absolutely love greens. So they love their kale, cabbages, comfrey and also dandelion leaves. And these were actually previously caged, so they wouldn't have had a lot of space, if at all any. But hopefully you'll get to see these girls a little bit more often on Growallotmore, and especially this one, as it likes to follow me around the block. Let's put her back and rejoin her with her mates. So my last job for the day is cutting back these alliums. These were called drumstick, and they perform for us really well every year. However, they've started to go to seed now, so I'm going to cut them back down to the base, and hopefully that'll put the energy back into the bulb, and we'll have another really good display next year. But thank you very much for joining us at Growallotmore, and hopefully I'll get to see you in October. And thank you very much for all the followers on all our social media platforms. But take care, and I'll see you again.